Okay. This is Barbara Ladinsky with the Chelmsford Art Society, and I am very happy to present that we're going to have Gwendolyn Lanier, who is a figurative artist, with us this evening. As you can see what Gwen has on the stage, she does exquisite portraits. She's going to talk to us a little bit about her method for creating these fantastic pieces of work and how she handles this information. She has a lot of shows that she has been in, a number of degrees that she has done. If you want to see more of Gwen's work, you can go over to the Brush Gallery and Studios in Lowell, and she has a site there at one of the studio options there. So I'm going to turn this over to Gwen. And Gwen, if you want to start.
Yes. Okay, my name is Gwendolyn Lanier, and I'm a figurative artist. A little bit more about my background. I've been drawing since I was 6 years old. It's always been this passion for me, primarily self-taught in drawing. Fast forward, went to college, and my focus is mostly ceramic sculpture. So the figurative work went from 2D to 3D. It wasn't until I attended the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia where I was encouraged to draw more and actually finish my work. At that point, I was just making sketches for sculptures and not really finalizing anything. So that was back in 2012. So I started working with this technique that I do here, which is a combination of charcoal, pastel, and then that's metallic is the graphite. Yep. And so when I start my work, what's the most important thing about what I do is the values. Because what your eyes do is that they translate light and dark. And your brain kind of makes up its own decisions about it. And I brought along this optic illusion. I do this optic illusion with my students as well. And as you can see, this center, it looks like they're raised, and the circles off to the side, they look like they are concave. But if you actually flip them over, they switch.
Ah, interesting.
So your brain is telling you that things are there that necessarily aren't there. So learning your values, for me, it's very important, especially if you want your work to look more three-dimensional. And also, I brought along this other optical illusion I show as well. The squares in the center, they appear to be different values, but they're actually the same. Next to the white, it appears darker, and next to the darker tones, it appears lighter. But if you flip it up, they're the same exact value. So I created this, and it's just a printout. So it's ink, so it's a little bit bluish tone compared to my pastels. But I poked a hole in them so I can use them as a viewfinder, so I can find the right hue of black, and I can match it. On this side, his face appears to be a lot brighter, but it's actually the same color over there as well, and I can use my viewfinder to find it. So that's just a tool that I give everybody to use when I draw. So I'm going to be doing this portrait of my son.
So when you're drawing, what materials are you using for your drawings?
I'm using pastels and charcoal primarily.
Okay.
I like using the charcoal for the very blacks, and more the gray and the whites. I use more of the pastels, so it depends on what I'm doing. Like this one, it's primarily charcoal. And so is this one, except for like the shirt. But then in the tour over there, that one is more of the grayscale pastels.
Now, when you're talking about pastels, do you have a particular brand that you like to use?
Not really. I actually have like a bin full of different ones. I use soft pastels, and they need to be really, really soft in order for me to use it. I do have some brands. This one, I don't even know if I'm going to spell it right. It's MUNGYO. It's a little bit harder than what I like, but if I want to make sharp lines, I would use something like this. Okay. But I'm honestly just using the Blick generic brand.
Okay.
But I have like a whole bin full of random. I don't even know which is which at this point.
Okay, I know I have a friend who does pastels, and she always uses like a sandpapery paper. What paper are you using also?
I'm using mixed media paper. It's made from Strathmore. It comes on a roll. The reason why I like using that paper is because it does have a tooth on it, right. So it holds the product, but it's not too much texture. Because I like my surfaces to kind of appear very smooth, so I don't want to combat with like the texture of the paper. Okay. And that's usually what's best. And so I find my mid-tone in the image, and I tone the entire paper first. That also helps hold the material as well, and it takes away some of the texture as well. And the other reason why I start with the mid-tone is because when I'm doing my values, I'm either going to go lighter or darker from here. Mm-hmm. So I already have my whole base tone down.
Okay.
And I'm using a kneaded eraser just to take out some of the lighter tones. I do this part first. Some people actually do the dark side first, but I do the light side because I like to transition my values very, very slowly.
Yeah.
So here, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create planes in the face. I'm not going super detailed first. I call it shadow blocking, shade blocking, because I want to get the basic dimensions down.
So you're subtracting what you had put the midtones on?
Yes.
And getting the highlights in.
And also another reason why I do this is because when I add a light tone on top of here, I want it not to get too muddy with the gray that's already down. So it cleans up the space. And I'm going to leave his eyes gray, because a lot of people make the mistake of actually making the eyes too white in the beginning, and that your eyes are actually toned as well. Only the highlights in the image are actually white.
So the process of toning the paper takes you about how long?
It doesn't take long at all. I just go over with a mid-tone over the whole thing, and I actually take a paper towel and then just smooth it in.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes you can use a chamois. A chamois actually sometimes takes off too much product, so I like using a paper towel instead.
Is there a particular brand of paper towel? Because I like Viva for watercolor and even for oil painting.
I mean, something soft, it's not too rough.
They're the really soft
Yeah.
ones. I'm like, oh, those are it. My husband argues with me when he goes to the grocery store. Those are so expensive. Why are you? Well, I
Right.
just buy it.
So I'm just gonna take off some of the lips. Okay, so now I just want to go, I want to go dark, but not too dark, so I'm probably going to be around like a 3 in my values, and I'm going to find those first. And I kind of mapped it out a little bit when I did my drawing. And when I did the initial drawing underneath, I used a willow stick. The reason why I used a willow stick is because
A what stick?
a willow stick, it's just a burnt twig.
Oh, okay.
So you'll mark it,
You can tell I don't draw.
and it erases very, very easy. It doesn't stay. So it's a good preliminary drawing material. I'm not sure what exact willow, if it's exactly a willow, but that's what they call them, willow sticks. And they come in different thicknesses.
They come in different what?
Thicknesses?
Thicknesses?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just
To
gonna,
do some research on that one.
yep, so I'm just blocking everything in right now. Usually it takes me much longer to do this, so I'm very interested how much I'm gonna get done in an hour. So I'm just gonna focus primarily on his face
Okay.
here.
You have such detail and expressions on the art that you have on the table. I
Right.
imagine it takes you very long.
Yeah, it does take, it takes a very long time. But once I start actually like blending everything in, you'll start to see. And I'm just gonna go ahead and just make this really, really black, really, really quick.
So that's the darker background.
Yes. I mean, because my eyes are trained, I can see the different shades of black in there, but I'm just gonna use it as a solid black. Use my artistic license to change up the image a little bit.
Now with pastels, are there many shades of black that you can buy?
Yes. Yes, they are. But I prefer to use a combination of the black pastels, the black charcoal. This charcoal is actually a lot deeper. I don't know if you can actually see
Yes, you
that,
can.
but it's
Yeah,
like,
very much
it's
so.
a lot deeper. So I usually start at a certain point of darkness, and then if I have to go deeper, because it's a lot easier to erase something that is lighter than it's darker.
And you're just using the kneaded eraser to erase?
At this point, I don't do very much erasing after. I just use the white. That's why I took it off, so that I can add the material
Okay,
on top of
all right.
it. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna start blending his face in a little bit. First, I'm just gonna put this. So I have 1, 2, 3. I have 4 different tones. When you're doing shade blocking, it's good to start with like a base instead of trying to go in with like very little detail here and there, because then so that you know what you're working with, and you know if you had to go lighter in a certain area or darker in a certain area. And when I shade, and I just use my fingers, good way to remove oils from your hands is, either washing them or using hand sanitizer to get rid of the oils so you're not putting it on your piece.
While you're doing that, I should mention that we have 2 grants, one from the Billerica Cultural Council and one from the Chelmsford Cultural Council, that are both helping the Chelmsford Art Society this year pay for our presentations. We are very happy about that one, because it's allowed us to continue our programs for this year.
Okay. Now, when I blend and shade, I normally blend in the area I put the product on first before I move into the other tone. So I'm actually going to put some of a lighter gray on. Oh, no, you can keep going. What I do is that I spray in between layers so that the product no longer moves. So the closer and closer I get to it being more refined, the less I want my product to move, so you spray in between. I can't spray indoors. It's something I have to do outside. So there's going to come to a point where I won't be able to add any more, and I would have to spray it, let it dry, and I just use a fixative. There's workable fixative, and it's an aerosol, or a final fixative.
Okay, I don't think the audience, if you want to repeat the question, can you use the mic? Because in the background, I don't think we heard the question at all. So she was asked, I should be repeating, I guess. Okay, how long can you keep playing with your tones? Is there a certain point where you can't do anything more about it? So that was the discussion we just had.
Yes, you can keep working on it. There is going to be a certain point where the colors will feel like, the tones will feel like they're blending into each other. It's not getting any brighter, or I just put too much product on, and I would need to spray it so that the pastel stays and it doesn't move. Like if I go over here and I touch this, there's nothing on my hand.
Okay.
Because I had sprayed a fixative over it. But this right here, if I go and touch here, you can see all the product on my finger.
Yeah.
So I can go as long as I need to. And I can even go back in and work on those and then just spray another layer. So what I mean is that you can continually work on it. It's dry, it's not wet. It's more like a chalky texture.
Okay.
So first,
What type of fixative are you talking about using here?
I brought it and I left it in the other room. It's fixative. It's in an aerosol can. So
And it's specific for pastels?
yes. Usually you use one for drying, graphite, pastels, and charcoal. They're the same brand because they kind of do the same thing.
Okay. I think the only time I've tried pastels, I think I used hairspray.
You can also use hairspray, and
Yeah.
I've used hairspray. The thing about hairspray is that the droplets are kind of too big sometimes, so you have to be a lot further away.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might get, because I think with this one I did use hairspray, and it has a little bit of droplets in them. Okay, so now I'm just gonna, when I'm blending, I'm actually blending on the line, and I'm not pushing it too much further because I don't want to interrupt what I have here.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna put some more of this. So you always blend in the area you put the product in before you start blending. And I just go right where the surfaces meet, and I don't push too much. Okay, so the thing with tone is, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build three-dimensionality in this.
So how many layers can you put on?
A ton. Sometimes there is too much. There is too much, but I honestly, my pieces are very thick.
When do you say that there's too much?
That's a good question.
Because I know when you're painting, and if you get so many layers of paint, and a lot of times you create mud. We call it mud.
It doesn't create mud, but it just looks too creamy, I guess. I guess it's more of an aesthetic. What I like about this one is that it was like just the right amount of tone on. Usually I stop when I feel like it's just right.
Okay.
But then I have pieces that I kind of feel like I destroyed because there's too much product on the page because
okay.
it doesn't look natural anymore, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm leaving this center here untouched because that's where I want to put the highlight. So I'm just going to draw around it right there. So there's a highlight on the nose, and there's a highlight there. And you can draw on top with the pastels, that's fine. So if I have something, that area that's too dark, I can just take the tone down. Yeah, it's a process. You have to keep adding. And like this is not a white, this is just a lighter gray, so I'm just putting that tone in.
And that's a pastel.
Yes. And I'm keeping in mind of the areas of the face that are raised.
So you're getting dimension right now.
Yeah. And I'm not doing much. I'm not adding too much detail. I'm not with the pencil yet. Usually I leave that to the very, very last. But even at this point, you can start seeing that it's starting to form because it's the way the tones play against.
Yeah.
And another note, sometimes even if you're having trouble with your pieces being too flat or not looking dimensional enough, you can take like artistic liberties with your pieces and add darker areas where you need it to recede and add brighter areas where you need the face to kind of come up more. Yeah, I need the side, some of the details in the eyes to be darker, but I don't want to go black just yet because this side of the face needs to remain a lot lighter. And this pastel actually does have like a red tint to it.
It's a shade of gray, though, correct?
Mm-hmm. But it has a red tint. It's warm.
Okay.
I should say it's warm.
Warm gray.
Yeah, opposed to cool.
Okay, I have a question. What are pastels made out of? Are they all made out of the same product?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they're made of. I never asked what they were made out of.
Because I always think of them as being a chalk.
Yeah, it is a chalk, and I know they're
Brown
pigmented,
pigment.
but I don't know, like I know oil pastels, they have oil in them.
Right.
These, I just think that they're just the chalk.
Okay.
They don't have any wax, like crayons have wax, and it's just plain chalk.
All right.
Very similar to, that's why it works well with the charcoal, because they have both the same properties. I'm just finishing off the tone. Here.
So your fingers get a workout blending.
They do. And they get quite dirty too. Just kind of used to it. It's hard for me to draw at that angle. I feel like that's too warm there, so I'm just going to add some more top.
You're adding, you just said you had it too warm and you're adding what?
A bluer tone gray,
Okay.
so it's a cooler tone gray.
So that was over the tone that was the gray that was toned red.
Yeah, so I'm just taking it down a little bit to create its shape. Okay, so yeah, I'm sorry, it does take a long time.
That's okay.
But I want to get,
Now that's just charcoal, correct?
yep, this is just charcoal. I just want to get this edge so I can blend it in. Because I want it to be more atmospheric. The technique that I the style I like to work in is called chiaroscuro. So it has a very obvious focal light to it, and it's pretty much the rest of it's kind of left dark. So that's why I usually work with the face and the figure first and kind of leave the background last, because I want to now start moving the background into here. Because another way to make something look more three-dimensional is to sharpen the focus in one area and then fade out the focus in this area.
Blend it in.
Because it tricks, another way to trick your eye
Right.
and make it seem like it's further away.
Now, before we started the session, when you were talking about your teaching somewhere, can you talk a little bit about that right now, too?
Yes, I teach at the Essex Arts Center in Lawrence, Massachusetts. I actually started going there when I was, I want to say 13.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's actually pretty cool that I'm teaching there now. And they nurtured my gift, and I found ceramics there. So I'm actually teaching drawing for children right now. But in the summer, I'll be doing adult drawing studies course.
Okay.
And that goes over the figure. My figurative classes are very popular.
Yeah, I can see why, yes.
So now that I softened that edge, it's now it's starting to pull it back in there that way. Okay, next I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start putting more detail in, so I'm gonna switch the pencils.
Okay, because it's 7:30, just
Yeah.
to give you a count of where we're at.
Okay. I'm gonna start using the charcoal pencil here. And I usually grab, so I don't smudge,
Ah,
so I don't smudge my piece. Because this area, it's such a small area that it's hard to not smudge, because I kind of felt like I was kind of bleeding into the eye a little bit. And this is, it's an extra soft, so it works just like the pastel. It kind of really glides, but I can unravel this so that it gets to a point. So I'm just gonna match his eyes here. And he's looking up at me, so I want to make sure that I'm leaving that space under to make sure his eyes are looking up. So with this right here, this is where I start refining a lot of the areas. And I can already see that I need to brighten some spots up. And I usually draw a circle for the highlight. That's usually the brightest point in the eye. And then I would shade around it. So that way that kind of stays fairly clean.
oh, okay, interesting.
I'm just going to move to another charcoal pencil.
Do the charcoal pencils have hardnesses?
Yeah, they do. I normally stick with the softer ones.
Okay.
Because I feel like they're the darkest.
Okay. And they get a lot of coverage with it.
Yes, they do. And the other thing with the harder ones is that sometimes they leave a shine too, because how they rub against the paper. And I have these like mono erasers, and they're actually those white plastic ones. They're just like in this extractable like thing, and I'm
That's
just
what you're doing for the white of the eye?
yeah, I'm just rubbing it out. The paper is fairly white, so I don't feel like I need to add white there to make it whiter. But you want the eyes to be a little bit sharper. And if I did that with pastel, it would have been a little bit
Too much.
blurriness there.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'm just looking at the image, and his eye is brighter over here. So I'm just adding the white here and a little bit below his eye, but I'm going to leave that area fairly gray. I'm actually going to make it a little bit grayer.
Now that's a gray, or is it a white? It's a gray?
It's definitely gray.
Okay. Because from here it looks whitish.
It does. Like a lot of the tones are just off just slightly enough. But if I was to put this white piece of paper here, you can see that it's definitely a gray.
Now, do you do portrait commissions?
I do a lot of them. Yeah. I like creating my own characters as well, but I do a fair amount of portraits, commissions. So I'm just going back in and I'm just adding a little bit more lightness there. And I just want to bring this out a little bit more because I think I added some charcoal there by accident. Okay, so when I'm blending his cheek, I'm going in this motion because I'm trying to follow the shape of his cheek. Just like with the forehead, when I added product and I blend it this way because I want to go into that shape.
Okay.
Something like the arm, because it's cylinder shape, I want to go I follow the curve and I kind of swing it towards the lighter tone, but I don't go just straight up and down because I want it to represent that it's like
the curve of
it
the
still
arm.
has a curve in it. So when you're shading, you should always shade with the curve that you're going. But something like the shirt, and I mean he has different patterns in his shirt, but this I would go straight down.
On the collar?
And for whatever reason, it does make a difference. Just like if you were cross-hatching.
Well, yeah, if you're cross-hatching or you're trying to get texture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
you're
you want
achieving
it to
that
look
way.
three-dimensional. You want to go with the curve of
Okay.
the actual object. So I'm just going to do his other eye just so I can kind of complete this part. Like I said, it takes me hours and days to do a portrait. And there's a lot of different components that go into it. Because then there's also anatomy and stuff like that.
Yeah, I noticed that on your one board that you brought over there has a schematic of the face.
Yes.
And are the muscles underneath that?
Yes. Okay, so this one, I like showing my students this because when we work with facial expressions, his expressions is kind of very muted. Only thing that's really activated is his eyebrows because he's like looking up. But I like using this as an example because it shows what muscles are activated when you're doing something. So if he's smiling, his oral muscle group is activated, but it also connects to the chin and to the upper group, and then that attaches to the eyes. So by opening up this way, you're going to activate these to contract, which is also going to affect the eyes too. So the muscles up here, they will be affected, but not as much because they're further away from where all the action is happening. So when I'm working with students and I'm trying to explain facial expressions and how to make what their nose should be doing when their person is smiling or what their chin should be doing, I use this to kind of explain just what's activated.
So there's a lot of understanding of anatomy to really get a good portrait.
Yeah. I mean, me as a sculptor, I kind of focus more on muscle.
Okay.
So when I draw, people say I draw like a sculptor. I don't know what that really means, but I guess I kind of do understand it because everything has to kind of look forms, like three-dimensional. And it helps my understanding of light working with the figure in 3 dimension as well. So that's why I have these other examples with that shows kind of like the planes of the face as well. And then this image right here shows light. The face is in the same position, but light as it's traveling around it causes the shadows to make different values there. And also proportion, I guess I can talk about that as well. A child's proportion is a little bit different than an adult's because their eyes have a tendency to be bigger. And he was, I think, 5 in this one. So so his eyes are bigger, and plus the angle. But as a general rule, you want to have one symmetry, so you want everything to kind of line up. But the eyes meet halfway through on the face, and then from the top of the forehead to the chin, they meet halfway. And then from the chin to the midpoint of the eyes, that's where the nose lines up.
Oh, okay.
And then from that line to the chin, in the middle of that is where the lips line up. So even if I was creating a generic face, I use those points to help get the proportions correct. And I'm just going ahead and I'm using the charcoal to kind of fix the shadow a little bit. And I'm just going to blend. And I'm blending where I put the charcoal first, and then I'm just slightly moving it out, just so it has like a soft transition. Another thing to make your pieces look more three-dimensional is to work with a wider range of values. In the beginning, started with just 4. We started with just 4. And you can see that it was forming, but once I started adding a little bit of more shades in certain areas, then it started really popping out. Because again, darkness recedes, brightness comes forward. So now me blending that charcoal into that area not only did it soften it, but now it actually added a little bit more dimension, and it was just like a few swipes.
Getting more of a curve.
Yeah, and it was just a few swipes. So I'm just putting charcoal on his eyes a little bit. I don't really like having rough lines in my pieces. I like it to be mostly just tone. So if I put a line in there, I always blend it out to soften it. And now his eye looks like it's more, more bulgy right in that area.
I'm just watching how your fingers are going a little here, a little there, a little
Yeah, yeah, they do. They
You're
kind of
dancing
dance
over the
around.
portrait.
It's even worse when I'm, doing a bigger drawing because I stand up in front of it and I'm just like, it looks like I'm dancing. I mean, I know his hair is there, but you can't really see it.
Just to give you a time, it is 7:45.
Okay. See, I knew this wasn't going to be done in an hour.
Well, you can go a little over, it doesn't matter. You just tell us when.
So this part here is a little tricky because I cannot actually see the details in this, even though I know it's there. So this part is his hair. So I'm just going to blend that in a little bit. But this hair also translates into shadow as
the shadows
well.
of the background, yes.
So now that I have this in place, I'm just going to just soften this and just pull it towards.
So give us a time frame, like of the portrait of the woman over on the right side over here. How many hours or days would it take?
I want to say it took 3 weeks to make, and it's probably like 4 to 8 hours a day working on that. Okay. Because also the graphite part is the most tedious part, because once you put the graphite down, you can't erase it. Ah. And I've tried to fix mistakes, but it's really hard to get rid of that heavy pencil mark.
So do you work in short spurts then at that point because it's tedious?
Usually, that part does take the longest, so I do have to stretch it out. Sometimes I'll just do like the basic outline just so I have it in there, and then I'll go in and I'll shade the graphite. And I do shade the graphite the same way as I would shade if you had a pencil, you were doing a gradient as well. Because the parts that I want to kind of recede back, I'll do it lighter, and then I'll put more pressure here, and then I would recede again. Okay. So it kind of gives you that look like it's metallic and it's floating in space. Okay. Like I said, I know his hair is there, but you can't see it in the image, so I'm just gonna use my artistic license to kind of create that edge. So I'm just gonna soften it But I'm
Okay.
gonna continue to have leave this area more textured. And to give the illusion of hair, and especially his hair type, he has very, very curly hair. I could just add little highlights here and there, and then I just tap them out so that they're not so strong
Okay.
and that they stay there.
Dappling them.
Yeah. So it kind of suggests it, but. And then I would go back in and maybe to add a little bit more dimension, make certain areas a little bit darker. I hope you guys can see this.
You can see it from here.
Yeah. Sometimes the detail is, or the change in value is so slight that it's hard to see it at first. But
Oh, tone on tone.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this area here, I'm just doing little lines to kind of suggest that that's where his hair is as well. Because I still want the skin underneath to show. So I'm just adding texture. Okay. Okay, I want his chin to kind of pop out some more, so I'm just going to start kind of putting these shades in here. Darker shades there.
Now that's charcoal again, or is that a pastel?
This is a pastel.
Pastel.
Yeah, because I don't want it too dark, just slight. And it's actually not even the blackest black of the pastel that I have in
Okay.
there.
You can almost hear the difference in texture on the paper.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. This is a little bit of his collarbone here, but it's so slight that you can't really notice it, so I'm just adding a little bit of the change in tone there. That one's too late. And sometimes, especially when I just want to show a slight change, I just add a little bit of a lighter tone on top of a darker tone and I get. Because initially when I saw this, that was really light to me, but now that I'm actually have finished a lot more of the drawing, I realized that it's like it needed to be a lot darker. So I'm going to continue to push the chin out by just adding darkness underneath.
This is fascinating to see his whole face emerge.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just cleaning this up a little bit. And the image is a little bit darker, but I feel in order to make it pop out a little bit more, I need to make it lighter
dimension,
there.
yeah.
So there I am taking like a little bit of a liberties with what my knowledge is. And I'm not used to drawing like this either. So.
And how do you draw typically? Since it's pastels, you would have to have it up so that the dust falls down.
Yeah, sometimes I do draw flat,
Oh, really?
as
Okay.
well. It depends on the size. Sometimes I have to, I'll lay it flat, then I'll pick it back up, and I'll lay it flat, pick it back up.
Because I've seen you have things over the brush stapled to the wall and drawn.
Yeah, those are the really big. Those ones definitely need to be on the wall. And also it helps control like the mess, because it does get really, really messy. I do have like a line of like just charcoal and pastel on the floor.
Okay.
I prefer to stand up and draw, to be honest.
Because when I paint, I like to stand paint.
Yeah.
I think I have more control over my arm.
Yes. It's when I'm doing like the detailed work with the graphite, then that's when I'm just like hunched over.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, anyone's been to art school, they know when you're drawing or painting, your professor tells you like loosen your arm and don't draw like this, draw like this.
Hours of yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not putting any lines in, really. I'm just putting product down and creating shadows. And if I have to take the tone down somewhere, I just take it down by going on top of it. I don't know what it is, but I don't like drawing lines at all.
But you get such great results. The tone on tone is fantastic.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. As you can see, it takes a lot of time, a lot of patience. But I feel it looks more organic that way. All right, now I'm trying to bump out his nose a little bit more by creating the shadow over here that's being created by the side of his nose. I blend on that area first, and now I'm just going to go over the line right there. All right.
So we are approximately at 7:58.
Okay.
So
as far as I got in an hour. It is very, very, very detailed work, and it does take a long time. I hope I explained everything very well enough. You know, because with drawing, there's a lot of different components that go into it. You know, you have to, especially with the figure, you're learning about anatomy and the structure underneath the figure you have to take into account. And then I study a lot of light and shadow, and that's what I think helps elevate my work to where it is. And I study optical illusions apparently as well, so I can train my eye to kind of see better. But you know, I have a lot of students, and they all kind of want to draw like me, but no one can teach you how to see.
right, that's true. Very true. And your eye has to get trained to see.
Trained to see. So I can only really like give the tools, but practice every day.
Okay. Besides the brush, are you showing anywhere else that people can see your work?
Occasionally, I show at the Attleboro Arts Museum in Attleboro, and at the Accessory Center.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I just we have one more session in May. We have Jimmy Lee coming on the 25th of May to do a presentation. And then the next big thing for the Chelmsford Art Society is the 4th of July show. We will be having the show in this building for the 4th of July. We also were fortunate enough to get a grant from the Chelmsford Cultural Council to help produce the show, so we're all looking forward to that, but we need people to step forward and help with that. and volunteer time because it's a huge undertaking. And the board right now is only the board, and we need more help. So we'll be sending information out about that. But I just want to thank Gwen for this because it's been enlightening. It's fantastic, the work you've done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.